Hello everybody, I'm Nam.
I'm Jeremy.
Ryan.
And today we are actually having a Netrunner party.
Woohoo. Yay! Nam's wonderful tutorial video, which we co-starred in. We're very excited that it hit 10,000 views, so we thought we'd return to Netrunner with this video.
Today we wanted to get together. First of all, we hadn't played some Netrunner for a little bit because of the holiday season. And we wanted to get together, play, and also make this video for you guys. First we're going to discuss how to deck build in Netrunner. If you've played other card games before, you might not need it. So some basic concepts. Anybody who's a new player who just learned how to play a game where you have to build a deck before the game, this might actually help you out. After that, we kind of want to go over some key cards in the base set and strategic use of them and any other strategic discussion. This will not be a full set review because there are other set reviews out there, so we're going to try and do something different. We just introduced ourselves. I also want to introduce Richard again. He's once again the cameraman. And then also Jason, he's moral support, but he's also part of our Netrunner play group. Deckbuilding Concepts.
Rather than go through the basic deck building rules which are in the rule book, just go over some basic ideas for constructed deck games that apply to Netrunner and to other games as well. I've seen online a question posted a bunch. Well, if your minimum deck size is 45, can I just include more cards to make a bigger deck? Because there's a limitation on how many of each card you can have. The key thing with that is I can have 3 copies of card A. I like card A. If I have 45 cards minimum in my deck, there's a 1 in 15 chance that I'm going to draw that one card because I have 3 copies in there. If I make a 60 card deck, suddenly it's a 1 in 20 chance. If you're looking to hone your strategy, to hone your deck, you want to stick to that minimum deck size, which is why for a runner deck especially, if your identity states that your minimum deck size is 45, you want to try to keep as close as possible to that 45. If you have trouble cutting that last card, 46 isn't going to kill you, but you want to keep to that 45.
So if you take a look, pretty much all of the identities in the base set all have a 45 card limit. For runners, it's 45 cards minimum, and for corporations, 45 minimum as well.
Corporation also has the added restriction of how many agenda points they have. For instance, if you have 20 or 21 agenda points in your deck, you can have a deck size of 45 to 49. Most people, I believe all 3 of us included, all 5 of us included, believe you should stick to the 49. Now, that goes against my minimum deck size. However, it dilutes the chance of having agendas, so you have more of your powerful cards to set up your board and prevent the runner from accessing agendas easier, stealing them easier, for you having to handle a big hand of agendas less often.
With a runner deck, anytime you draw a card, there's probably one particular card that would be optimal for that situation. The more cards that are in your deck, the least likely you are to draw the exact card you're looking for. On the corporation side, you're generally aiming to not draw agendas early on, so the more non-agenda card you have in your deck, the more likely you are to draw what you want.
That's pretty much basic statistics for why you should include certain numbers of cards in your deck.
In many other games, the most popular deck building game, Magic, you can have 4 copies of card. This is 3. Most people take the attitude of, well, why don't I just have 4 copies of every card in my deck, completely streamline my strategy. That's not always the best idea either. There are cards in Netrunner where you can only have 1 copy out, the consoles or anything that's unique. Bad part about having 3 of those in your deck, because if you have one played already and you draw one, that is what we call a dead draw. It's a useless card. Now, as a runner, it's not necessarily bad because sometimes having extra beef in your hand for getting damage is not bad, but as a corporation, that can kind of be really painful.
That'd be really bad. You're dead drawing and you can't do anything with it. And the one good thing is if the runner goes to run in your hand and you happen to have dead cards in your hand, that just decreases the chances of them hitting an agenda or a card
that's true.
But that's really the only useful thing, because otherwise you can't really get rid of them.
There's a card, San City Grid. You can only have 1 per
remote server.
1 per remote server. It's a really great card, however, it is expensive to play. I would never run more than 2 in a deck. If I had 3 in a deck, chances are I'm going to have 1 out, probably haven't even rezzed it yet. Draw another one, and as great as it is, it's not protecting anything. It's just helping me advance those agendas. Chances are I'm not going to have 2 remote servers with agendas at the same time. If I have 3 in a deck, I'm always going to have that extra one that's a dead draw. I'll probably put more than 1 in a deck because if it's the bottom of my shuffle, I'm never going to get to it. So I'm going to hope that it's in that top half. So I'm going to put 2 in a deck.
For me, I personally also like to put 2 copies of any integral unique cards in my deck as well. However, if it's something that's consumable or is like really good as like an quick play and you get this huge boost, I would run all 3. So it really depends on your preference. Sometimes I'll even run 1 ofs just because I want to have the flexibility in there, because the more that you have of so many copies of everything, the less flexible your deck is in given situations. So If you absolutely need it, don't be afraid to run one-ofs. A good example would be running one-ofs in specific icebreakers when you're in Criminal, because you have special orders. Special order is the one that lets you search your deck for an icebreaker.
Which brings up another good point. In most constructed deck card games, there are cards that basically they search your deck for a card. So in essence, you're paying a fee with that card to get another card. In essence, you can really make it be a copy of a card. Say there's card A I may want and card B I may want, but it depends on the situation. If I have a card that can search for either A or B, it's one card slot that effectively becomes a copy of both A and B. So say I have 3 searchers and I have these 2 specific cards. I have 4 of each, but depending on the situation, I may not even want that one ever. That's where a card that searches your deck for other cards, special order. The one with the guy has a gun to his head. That's
aggressive negotiation.
That's
aggressive negotiation.
That's a great card as well for searching your deck. Now it has restrictions as well, so you got to take those into consideration. That's why anything that says search your deck for this is immensely powerful.
Very good. I agree.
With my corporation decks, one trick I like to use is to always add, say, a random snare. Even as just a single card, the fact that it's in the deck, as long as I have the snare somewhere in the deck, the runner has to play around it. They always have to acknowledge that the threat is there and it could ruin their day out of nowhere.
So even if you don't run all 3 copies, running 1 or 2 snares in the off-Jinteki factions is perfectly fine. That's something that I actually do.
I have. My main corporation deck doesn't, but it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about
No, we're not going to talk about decks. We're not.
No, we're not going to talk about decks. So you have your deck constructed, and you're going to start playing a game with somebody. There is this option at the beginning of the game which allows you to mulligan your hand away. The initial 5 cards that you draw, if you don't like them, you can put them away. So let's discuss brief strategy on mulliganing. Let's start with the runner, because I think that'll be a little bit simpler. So mulliganing with a runner hand. When you do it, when you don't.
Well, with the runner hand, usually I want some type of resource card. I want to get a jump on resources so I can have a resource base. And by resources, I mean money. Money or anything else that may give you extra, like hardware that gives you extra tricks and stuff like that. Usually if I have a console in my opening hand, I'm not mulling.
Okay, yeah, because consoles are hard to get, because you'll have only 1 or maybe 2 decks.
And they're usually very powerful.
Modded would be one.
Modded is a great card. The big one is there's certain cards that are just so good money cards. If I have Magnum Opus in my deck, if I get Magnum Opus in my opening hand, there's no way I'm mulling. I don't care what the other 4 cards are, because that's going to set tone for the rest of the game. And if I mull and don't have it, I'm going to be searching for it. Basically, as a runner, you want to think to yourself, what are 5 cards that you'd love to have in your opening hand? If you have any of them or multiple ones in your opening hand, you keep it. If you're looking for something else, if you have nothing but expensive cards that you don't think you'll be using early,
mull that. I personally try and take it to a slightly different level. Have some sort of resource jump, but only one of the cards has to be. I don't need to have 4 money cards. Actually, if I have 5 money cards, I would probably mull that.
I wouldn't.
You would? Alright. Well, okay, so my playstyle is a little bit different, but I want to start doing things differently. But I guess it also depends on what runner you're playing as.
It depends on your strategy.
Definitely.
Well. Anarch decks, I believe, are the most difficult ones to decide your mulligan, because the Anarch deck works like a machine. It has a bunch of parts that work together. Both Shaper and Criminal have a lot of more independent, powerful cards. Whereas Anarch, you have this one card that's great if you have another card out, or if you have this card. With mulling for them, you want to try to have a few engine pieces that work together. And if all the pieces you have in your hand really don't start that function, then you want to mull. But that's a more difficult deck to run.
That's a different, like, if I'm playing Gabriel Santiago, the Criminal, he gets money if you're running on HQ, so I would not usually mull if I don't have any money cards, per se, because I know I could get maybe 1 or 2 runs in before they really protect it. Unless, you know, they're playing intelligently, they protect it right away, in which case you might have to be paranoid. But
runners, in essence, are easy to mulligan because you really don't have to rely on your opening hand too much, and you're not going to you don't have a dead weight hanging on your leg. On the other hand, corporations, much different.
Mulling
can be dangerous.
It's a very tough thing to do.
Because there's only 1 chance to redraw your hand. So what are things you throw away? If you pick up your hand, you have 5 agendas.
I mean, I feel like that's brain dead. Like anybody who's...
I know.
You know, but...
Well, that's not necessarily... not everyone realizes it, because you open your hand, and if you're a new player, you may go, oh, these are all the points I need to win. Yeah, that also means the runner can hit it and win. That also means you need to get rid of your hand. You have nothing to protect anything. You have nothing to advance your resources.
You have no money cards to advance all of those. So you don't have enough actions per turn to get rid of them all.
5 agendas, mull no matter what. 4 agendas, mull no matter what. 3 agendas, most of the time mull unless your other 2 cards are really awesome.
Yeah, it really depends on me for that one. The times in which I might keep 3 agendas, if I'm playing Wayland or playing NBN, and there's some of those 1-point agendas that I can just score right away, I might keep that.
In that case, they're not even, you're using them more as a money card than as an agenda card in that instance, where you're just instantly dropping and cashing them.
Not breaking
Hostile
news.
takeover.
Hostile takeover.
Hostile takeover. Okay. A card like Hostile Takeover, I agree. It is almost more of a money card, especially since if the runner hits it, it's only 1 point lost. But that's one of the powerful parts of Wayland is those agendas.
Yeah. So it really depends on what you're trying to do with it.
On the flip side, ice. You need to protect your servers. If you have no ice in your opening hand, you got a mole, in my opinion. You almost have to.
Unless you also have no agendas, in which case I think that's a different issue. But let's start with, let's say, okay, the big hand that everybody says they want to keep when they're corporation. Big money hands. Let's talk about that.
One of the first people I taught, and in an early game they played, they mold a hand that had 5 ice. Not only that, they mold a hand that had 5 cheap ice. And their reasoning was, there's no money cards. That was possibly the most insane move I've ever seen someone do. I crushed them in that game. That's just a general idea. If I have 5 ice, if they're relatively cheap ice, I'm never mulling that. That's just me.
If there's 5 ice, I might just keep it regardless, even if they're all like 8 cost ice.
Same thing with me, but
yeah. Okay. So, but anyway, that's a little bit different. Most of the time, if you have 5 ice, you'll probably have some cheap ice, maybe some expensive.
Because you have flexibility on what you can protect. You have flexibility on the ways you're going to protect. You know how the game is going to play out.
But also, you're playing the runner's psychology. So if you have that much ice and just a bunch of money, whether you can afford it or not, that just might deter them from running.
If I'm playing as a runner and the corporation on the first turn for his first 3 actions goes draw, ice, 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 I don't care what I have in my hand. I'm kind of scared at that point. Do you guys kind of agree with that?
Oh yeah. I'm like, oh, ice, ice, oh crap, I can't run on anything. And at that point, I just kind of sit back, and if I'm on the run, I'm just going to try and sit back and play my stuff.
Just for fun, what's the best opening hand you've ever seen as corporation?
2 money cards, 3 ice.
Same, I would think.
Because at that point, I would actually, because usually the money cards I'm thinking are either hedge fund or melange. But basically, you could then protect your R&D with 1 or 2 ice, and then still have money left over to do whatever you want after.
See, my favorite hand was slightly different. I had 3 cheap ice. I had a wall of static, which is a cheap barrier, 2 ice walls, and 2 snares.
Ooh.
It was I went R&D. My opening turn was draw a card, R&D, remote server, remote server. The runner had no idea what was going on. They ran my hand, got snared. The second turn, I got more money. They ran my hand again.
They got snared.
And then they had no cards. They had multiple tags. They couldn't get rid of them all. I was
and
destroying resources.
No money, yeah.
Oh, it was ridiculous. I didn't need money cards. Money cards were, I don't care. I had these, and anytime I was resing the ice, they had end the runs. And it also didn't help they couldn't get a barrier breaker to save their lives.
Oh, it's also important to note that if you have a bunch of ice that are cheap, but none of them end the run, but you have like an agenda or 2, that might sway you depending on how you want to deal with it. Psychological thing aside, if the player that's playing runner is good and they're confident they know, and they're going to take risks, like they should, I feel like I'm a safe player, so don't ask me about taking risks.
Yeah,
talk to this guy, though.
Early on, Hunter is not nearly as scary as Wall of Static.
It depends. It depends, because one of the reasons I like a card like Hunter, certain cards that don't end the run, is because runners, I think a lot of people are, oh, well, I can get through that. And they start running through Hunter to try to hit your deck or your hand. And they may get an agenda or 2, but suddenly they're building up tags, and suddenly they're wasting resources getting rid of these, while you can work on other parts of the game. We were just playing earlier, and I sort of won in most of the game. I was working in other areas while the runner had to focus on one thing that I had. He finally got through, but I had control of the game at that point.
It was difficult, but...
Too late.
Oh well. Too late!
Just because, wait. You don't want this to be too rambly? Alright. I'll see you later. I'll be back. And
Ryan's going to name a bunch of cards, and we're just going to talk about them. So...
King of Hearts.
Alright.
Sold!
Ace of Spades! The Ace of Spades!
Get out of here.
But I live here!
That doesn't even go on the blooper reels.
That's
Boo!
busted bit.
Oh,
Alright.
Man.